Good morning, friends. How nice to be able to be together. You know, this is one of those readings that is absolutely central. The spiritual path is very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. Now, religion can be very complex, but the spiritual path is very simple. What it is that we're trying to dissolve the ego, trying to dissolve the false delusion of the soul that's attached to the body and the senses and the personality. One time we were with Swamiji in India, and we were talking about the difficulties of the spiritual path. And like Jesus did here, Jesus summed up the entire spiritual path in a very short sentence or two. Swami also summed up the whole spiritual path. In fact, he was having breakfast and he started to take a bite. We were talking about the difficulties of achieving the results of the spiritual path. And he was about to take a bite. He said, the spiritual path is very simple. The whole reason for the spiritual path is to dissolve the ego. And that's done by longer, deeper meditation and seeing God as the doer in everything. And finished his bite, and that was it. What Jesus here is doing very much the same thing. God is spirit, and he must be worshipped in spirit and in truth. That's the whole spiritual path right there. Now, it may seem a little confusing, but what Jesus is saying is that God is immaterial. Spirit is consciousness, but consciousness that is immaterial. And therefore, he must be worshipped in spirit. That means we have to worship him, we have to merge with him without material form. Material form applies to the ego. So if we want to merge with God, we have to overcome the ego. The whole of the spiritual path is to dissolve the ego. That's what Swami was saying. Jesus is saying the same thing. We have to dissolve the ego, the false identity that we have, and if we do that, then we can worship God in the truth of who we truly are. Now, the question obviously comes up, who am I? And that, again, can be the whole spiritual path. In fact, there's a great saint, great teacher in India, Ramana Maharshi, who basically his entire teaching was to inquire, who am I? And you keep working on that and getting rid of false layers of identity until you get rid of the ego. We are never, ever going to lose the sense of I am. We're just going to shift our awareness of who I am. Reminds me of apparently a true story where there was a big storm that came through, and so there was a huge delay, and a lot of airplanes were grounded, and so there were long lines at this airport of people trying to rebook their flights. And so, quite a long queue for people coming up. And there was this one very self-important man who came up butted up to the head of the line, and he said, "You have to book me on a flight." And the attendant, the clerk, said, "No, you have to go to the back of the line and wait your turn, sir." And he said, "Do you know who I am?" And she got on the microphone and said, "We have a man here who doesn't know who he is. Can anyone help him?" So, if you don't know who you are, we've got help coming for you. So, who am I? Now that's a very real question. There are a couple of philosophies that that are very interesting. Descartes, most of you have heard of Descartes and his famous statement, cognito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Now, Swami said he had it backwards. He is, and therefore he can think. But let's come at it from Descartes' viewpoint. He started out with the thought, you can't prove anything. You can't believe anything. So what can I get to that is absolutely irrefutable? And so he said, you can't believe that this world is real. Maybe it isn't real. Maybe it's just a dream. You can't believe that anything. So you can't believe anything. What is absolutely irrefutable? Well, I'm conscious. I'm thinking. And therefore, I have to exist. And so, cognito ergo sum, that was his ultimate reality. There is one philosophy called solipsism, I think. Anyway, it's one philosophy that can never, ever be either proven or disproven. And that's the philosophy that the only thing that exists is my consciousness. And so I can't disprove it, because if I try to disprove it, any disproof that I have is an extension of my consciousness. Nor can I prove it, because any proof that I have is also an extension of my own consciousness. Well, it's true, only it's not our ego consciousness. It's God's consciousness. That's the only thing that exists. But coming back to this wonderful, wonderful teaching of Jesus, that God must be worshipped in spirit and in truth, what we're trying to do in all of this spiritual path, one might say, is get to the truth. So coming back to the question, who am I? What is the truth of who I am? Well, we have to begin to peel back the layers to that, because generally speaking, we think that we're who we are. I mean, who am I? I'm Jyotish, and I have a certain age, and I'm a man, and I'm so tall and so wide. Well, maybe too wide, but anyway. So all of those things that are of the senses, of the perception, but they're all false. We have to worship in truth. I'm not this body or this personality. I'm spirit. And I have to find that ephemeral me that isn't attached to the physical world. So I'm the soul is a much better definition of who I am. So the spiritual path basically is the search to get back to the soul. And if we can get back to the soul, then it's a short step from there to say, well, all the souls are just God taking individual form. But the soul, when it is functioning in a particular localized body, time, and space, attached to the senses, then that is the definition of ego. So Master said the ego is the soul identified with the body and the personality. Swami said the ego is a bundle of self-definitions. So all of those self-definitions that we have that attain to the body, that's not the spirit, because the spirit is ephemeral. It's not in a physical form, and it's not the truth. And if we want to find who we are, find God, we have to worship Him in spirit and in truth. So one might say that the entire spiritual path is an attempt to get beyond or dissolve that delusion that we're the ego. So our spiritual path, Master brings us these wonderful teachings, all of which are designed and designed as the most efficient way possible to get rid of the sense that I am the ego, I am the bundle of self-definitions. So what is the basic form of our meditation practice? We sit and we practice Hong Sa. Now, why do we practice Hong Sa? The meaning of Hong Sa, it's a bija mantra, but the meaning is, I am. We can't lose the sense of I am, but it means I am He. Not I am this ego, I am God. I am spirit. I am the ephemeral spirit. That's the truth. I am He. So we keep affirming that. But more than affirming that, through the practice of Hong Sa, we're trying to withdraw the energy that goes out through the senses. It's the senses and the restless mind that keep us in the delusive thought that we're something other than the soul, other than the I am principle. So we're trying to withdraw the energy, I am He. We start with the affirmation and the withdrawing, the use of the breath to withdraw the pranayama. Our whole path is pranayama, withdrawing the energy. It's the restless mind. It's the restless bundle of self-definitions that if we keep that going, then we're lost. We can't perceive the truth. And so we're trying by the practice of meditation to withdraw the energy. Sometimes I've used this example that people ask, my mind is so restless during meditation, how do I ever get my thoughts to calm down? Well, imagine a table and you have a big pillow, a big feather pillow, and you open it up and you dump all of those feathers on the table and one falls off. Well, you can go and pick up that feather, put it back on the table and keep them calm. But if you've got a ceiling fan going over it, no matter how often you run and grab a feather, they're going to keep blowing off. And the faster that fan is going, the faster your restlessness is going, the more your thoughts are going to be scattered. So what is the solution? Well, it's obvious to everybody. Turn off the fan. That's what pranayama is. Turn off the energy that's going outward into restlessness, because you can't stop the restless thoughts without turning that off. Hong Sa. The purpose of Hong Sa, the purpose of Kriya Yoga, the purpose of all meditation is to turn off that restlessness. And once that restlessness is turned off sufficiently, then the little feathers calm down, and then we can begin to see beneath the surface of all the bundle of self-definitions that I am simply the eternal qualities of the soul that have taken on this particular form in this particular delusive time and space that I'm living in. And so as we undergo that process, the ego dissolves, not the sense that I am, I exist, that will stay forever. But the I am shifts from being I'm this body and personality to I am that which has created this body and personality. I am spirit, and I am worshiping spirit in truth. And as we break the delusion or dissolve the ego, as Swami said, what's left? There's still an I am. That won't go away, but what's left? That I am principle shifts to the consciousness of spirit, and we worship the spirit in spirit and in truth, and then ultimately, as that process continues, we become spirit and truth. That is our true self-identity. So Jesus, in this beautiful passage, has really summed up the entirety of the spiritual path in just one little short reading. So let's be about our Father's business and worship in spirit and in truth.
Thank you, Jyotish. And I'll share a bit also this morning. When our guru came to America in 1920, the very first talk he gave at the Congress of Religious Liberals in Boston the title was The Science of Religion. And in a sense, that began his mission that has extended forward to this day and will continue to expand forward, because the world needed a new expression of religion. The forms and the divisiveness no longer served a purpose, and people needed to understand that behind the forms of religion was actually an intelligent practice that enabled people to develop spiritually. That's what the science of religion is. Practical, provable activities through experience and experiment that shows us who we really are. And we need to understand, too, that religion takes different forms in different ages. Most of you are familiar with Sri Yukteswar's teachings from ancient Vedic times of the great cycles of the yugas. Well, these are cycles of descending and ascending levels of consciousness, depending on the movement of our galaxy, of our Earth within the galaxy, and where we draw more rays of enlightenment or it's diminished. And in each of these yugas, each of these ages, religion takes a different form. And the practice of religion takes a different form. So in the highest age, Satya Yuga, the age of truth, where Christ said we need to worship God as spirit and truth, people automatically feel and understand and experience their unity with God. You don't really need a form of religion. It just is, that truth. People live it. Then the consciousness descends a little bit. The rays of this great enlivening center of the galaxy, we move farther away from it. And we come into the next age, Treta Yuga, the third age. And this is the age of mental power, where man understands this physical world isn't really the ultimate reality. Through my mind, I can accomplish anything. I can change this dream world. And so religion is more, it's a practice then of using the mind to transcend matter and ultimately bringing us to the experience of our oneness with God. But then it descends a little further and we come where we are right now, Dwapara Yuga, the age of energy. And so what did our guru bring in this age? Techniques of energy, of prana, because that's what people understand. And I read recently that Swami said, Americans particularly were looking for a technique. There must be something beyond just going to church and sitting there and listening to someone deliver great truths. But there has to be something more than that. There has to be techniques. The science of religion. Master came early Dwapara Yuga and brought the science of religion, how to work with energy, and all of our path, as Jyotish was saying. First we start with Hong Sa, which is the affirming of our unity with God by focusing on the breath. But then ultimately, if you continue on this path, you receive Kriya, which is the ultimate technique of working with energy, inner energy, raising the prana. It's the perfect technique for Dwapara Yuga. In Treta Yuga, Satya Yuga, they probably don't need techniques, but we do now. And so the science of religion, to worship God through awakening the inner energy, raising it to the higher consciousness, then that takes us really, we may be living in Dwapara Yuga, but those who practice Kriya Yoga regularly and deeply, you're in Treta, and then you're in Satya Yuga. We transcend the time, the age in which we live. And then finally we come to Kali Yuga, which thank God we've just exited, where all they know is the form of religion and the diversity of religion and the antagonism of religion and the need to kill people who practice a different religion. I mean, think about it. It's hard to conceive, but that's what people do. And then it descends into rituals. Okay, we don't really experience God, but if we do this over and over again, then he'll be there. But it's not experiential. It's just form. And so we're coming out of that age of form, and we're ascending again into ascending Dwapara Yuga, where Master comes and gives us the science of religion. And he gives us Kriya Yoga, ancient technique from higher ages, but we can use it now. And as we begin practicing and understanding, what is religion? What is it? Ultimately, it's the power to know God. Master said the time for knowing God has come. Is it just kind of like a new movie that's being shown? No, it's a change of consciousness through the use of these techniques. I read some years ago a short story which had a big impact on me. This was before I was on the spiritual path, but I recognized there's truth in this. And it was a short story it was called Mr. Andrews by E.M. Forster. He wrote Passage to India, and they made a movie of it, but I'll digress a little bit. I read that, I was assigned to read that book in high school, and the book, A Passage to India, it's the story of during the Raj in India, during the British colonial times, how there's two friends, a man, Indian, and a British man, and they really try to be friends. There's an innate connection there, but just the circumstances and the mentality of the age, they're driven apart, and at the end they're reconciled. But I remember I was just a high school girl. I never had read autobiography, never knew any of this, but I remember, and maybe that's why Master brought me to his path. I remember finishing that where the Indian and the Westerner just couldn't find the way to really make their friendship endure. And I remember laying down on my bed and just crying. And I thought, why does that have to be? Why does that have to be? Why can't they come together? And that's what Master brought. Bringing together the East and West, bringing together all religions. So getting back to the short story, which I started with and went into a digression. So in the story, Mr. Andrews, there's two souls, good men, and they've just died. And one's a Muslim, one's a Christian. And they're ascending up to the higher realms, and it's taking them a while, so they start talking to each other. What did you do with your life? What did you do? And they're thinking, this is a good man, this other person. Yes, he's led a very good life. He's been selfless, he's been noble, he's been serviceful to others. And too bad he can't get into heaven, though, because he's a Muslim or he's a Christian. And but as they ascend, they feel more and more their unity. And finally, they get up to the heavenly realms, and they are asked the question. And they're both thinking, oh, I'm so sorry that my friend can't get into heaven. And then God asks them, what can I do for you? And spontaneously, they both say, let him go in. I will stay back. If heaven is only for Christians, then he can take my place. If it's only for Muslims, he can take my place. And then they both go into heaven. And that's the ascension of the spirit. That's worshiping God beyond form. where you just, that, as we read in the passage this morning about kindness, where you see all the world as your family. And so to worship God in spirit and in truth is to transcend all forms, all religion. Master came to bring world brotherhood, world unity. His mission statement is show the underlying truth of all religions, show that know that all people are of the same divine family, and we have to remember that, and we have to live it in this day and age in which we live. And so to worship God, ultimately, we don't worship him, we become him. And in that becoming, we know that we are a part of his love, that we can share that love with everyone. And Master gave us the way in this age to transcend this age, to transcend form, to transcend even practices. That's why they say do meditate, do Kriya, but then just be. Don't forget that. It's a vital part of sadhana. Don't just think, oh, well, I did my practices, now I have to rush off to work. No, the practices are just the beginning. But to then worship God in spirit and truth until you realize thou and I are one. Thou art I am thou, knowing, knower, known as one. God bless you. Me sitting in the front row telling us what to do.
so